And welcome to this video where I want to compare FreeCAD 0.18 to SolidWorks and discuss some of the differences in functionality that I find. I want to be biased and first off tell you that I've been using FreeCAD long enough to find this software to be absolutely brilliant in almost all of my modeling, and I've even modeled some duplicate items in FreeCAD at work just to have another format. In almost all cases, this is almost interchangeable with what I use SolidWorks for. So the example that I'm going to pull today is just one that is a little bit more complex and actually has some differences in functionality that I can show you. In almost all cases, FreeCAD does the job without question amazingly well. So for being a free software, I just can't believe how amazing and robust this is. I'm going to start by going into my part design, and let's sketch by sketch create identical parts between SolidWorks and FreeCAD and discuss some of the differences. So I'm going to start a new document, and I'll create a body under part design and create a sketch on the XY plane. From here, let's make a compressor, and so I will go into construction mode, create a circle, and give this circle a radius, let's say 4 inches. And then I'll make, in non-construction geometry, probably a blade outline. So there's a general dimension. Let's go with 1/4 inch. There we go. And these will be horizontal. They're already concentric. And so now let's give them a dimension of, let's say, 625. From here, I'm going to make both of these arcs coincident upon our outline. This will be this blue construction circle will be, say, the footprint of our compressor, and I'll assign a radius to the inner arc of, say, 4 inches. And then from here, I'll add another line. Under completely normal circumstances, I would want to put the end of my blade on the center. However, it seems like there's a little bit of an easier time lofting if I don't do that. So I'm going to break the rules a little bit and move my blade over just a little bit. In fact, let's move it over 3/4 of an inch. Alright, I'll move into construction geometry, and I'll draw a vertical line that'll make horizontal with my origin, and we'll go tangent to vertical. And now we're fully constrained in the sketch. That's one thing. I like to make all my construction geometry fully constrained. In FreeCAD, if it is not fully constrained, if I get rid of this, I have 1 degree of freedom, this one little thing. In SolidWorks, you register a fully constrained sketch if your reference geometry is not fully constrained. So that's one difference that comes to mind right off the bat. So add back in that horizontal constraint. That's a very small difference, of course. Now I'll get out of the sketch, and let's make that same sketch in SolidWorks. Let me open up a new part, and I would probably do this a little bit differently if I was only doing this in SolidWorks, but since we're working in FreeCAD, I want to make it the exact same. So let's get on the top plane, which I believe is the plane that I sketched on in FreeCAD. Make a sketch, and I'll make a circle, and I'll make it for construction with Now, in FreeCAD, it was a radius of 4 inches. SolidWorks automatically does a diameter, so I'm going to do a diameter of 8 inches, which should be the exact same size as FreeCAD's 4-inch radius on that circle. From here, let's do another 3-point arc. And I'll do the center line that will allow us to be tangent to vertical. So make sure that we are tangent. And we'll make sure that we're concentric here. That's one thing. FreeCAD does not have the concentric relation. Instead, I usually take the arc centers and make them coincident, and that's a perfectly fine solution for me. I've never had a problem with not having concentric. Okay, with some of this sketching, I'll go 3/4, I think it was. Whoops. 0.75, and then I believe I was a 1/4 inch here. When I revolve in FreeCAD, I find that it comes out best without any errors or anything when the blades do not touch. So I add this little extra 1/4 inch and this 3/4 inch over here to try to loft ideally for FreeCAD and not have them touch. Coincident. When I was in engineering school and I first tried this, man, my blades were crossing like crazy. They were touching in all sorts of places, and SolidWorks still ran with it. So it seems like SolidWorks is very robust in that standpoint. So I gave this radius of 4 inches and this 0.625. And we're fully constrained over here. So just to visually see, yeah, looks about the same. And notice I'm fully defined down here, but I still got my blue point on my construction line. Just out of habit, I'll make that horizontal and rebuild the sketch. You can see SolidWorks keeps construction geometry, whereas FreeCAD does not. Again, small difference. Let's go ahead and move on to another sketch. How about I create a sketch? Oops, but I had my sketch highlighted there, so unhighlight that, create a sketch on this plane. Now I can just add a rectangle and give it a horizontal dimension. I gave my previous sketch a 1/4 inch, so I'll follow suit. And I'll make the top of this. This will be the upper profile of our blade. 2.75 inches. I'll keep a consistent thickness of this blade, 0.625. And then I'll give this a length from the origin horizontally at 3 inches. Oh, and I've got some kind of constraint stopping me, and I've accidentally exited my sketch, as I always do. Let's see. Well, it looks like I'm not constrained to my height, and that was supposed to be my height, so I messed that up. Let's go to a height of 2.75, and then out here to here, 3 inches. Great, so those are the start and end point of my blade. Let's go ahead and do that in SolidWorks. As we get normal to our plane here, create my rectangle, smart dimension from here to here, and we're going to be 0.25. Our overall height relative to the origin is going to be 2.75. From here, and then relative to the origin, 3 inches. Excellent. So refresh that sketch and we'll come back to FreeCAD. Now we cannot 3D sketch in FreeCAD as far as I know, so let's make a datum plane instead, which should be perfectly fine. Start this datum plane, and I want to reference here and here. And that did not go, so reference 2. That's better. So you got the vertex and I think they call it wires in FreeCAD. So let me highlight this and begin sketching. And I went to the other side, and I prefer sketching on this side over here. Okay, so now that I'm in a sketch, first I have to import some geometry here and here. So now that I've imported these 2 points, I can reference these 2 points with my 3-point arc. There we go. And I meant to do, SolidWorks defaults to this kind of 3-point arc, the endpoints and rim. And so I'm in a terrible habit of starting my 3-point arcs like that. Give it a radius of, let's say, 4.6. And we'll close that sketch. Coming into SolidWorks again, I would probably, whoops, see that I was trying to move the FreeCAD way and I couldn't do it. Anyways, I was trying to, I would be doing a 3-point or a 3D sketch rather, should I not be doing a direct comparison to FreeCAD. So I'll say features, reference geometry, plane, and I'll choose the same references here and here. And now I've got my plane. I need to add one more sketch element to both of my models that I seem to have forgotten. I'll use a 3-point arc. So SolidWorks, again, I can just highlight. When I highlight stuff, I got to hold the control key. So it's kind of annoying. It's nice that FreeCAD doesn't make you hold the control key to select multiple things. I'll choose concentric. And I cannot, oh, there's my arc. We'll merge these points together. And I can even make this coincident to fully constrain. And there's the arc. We'll add the same arc in FreeCAD. And I'll choose my center point arc so that I can maintain being coincident under this point and this point. And we're fully constrained, and that completes our blade. Remove redundant constraint 13 and 8. And we have a degree of freedom. Okay, it looks like I got to get vertical. There we go. And we're fully constrained. Close. Now I'll go back to SolidWorks and close this sketch out. The vertex to define the plane no longer exists. So what SolidWorks is telling me is I put a 3-point arc on one of the vertices that I used to define the plane. So I'll go into this and replace my missing reference here. And we were able to clear that error. Okay, so let's begin sketching in FreeCAD. Oh, I've got my path here, so let's complete that sketch in SolidWorks. Control 8 to get normal. I'll just make my thing. Now, in FreeCAD, I import some sketch elements. For SolidWorks, they seem to just highlight when you hover your mouse over them. Except when you have elements overlapping like we do here, Then I might have to get a 3D view so SolidWorks know what I'm trying to point out to it. Now I'll give that a radius, again smart dimension of 4.6 is what we gave it. And now I've actually accidentally opened another version of FreeCAD. How do you like that? We'll go on to the next portion. Let's go ahead and make this compressor blade. And clearly I have misreferenced something here in SolidWorks, but thankfully, or SolidWorks and FreeCAD. See, look how mixed up I'm getting to doing two of this at once. Let me delete this vertex and select this vertex with this line, and this may wreak havoc on my sketch. We'll see. Okay, I just have to do a minor update. Sorry about that. Let's edit sketch 002, and we should not be fully defined, so we'll remove this constraint, and apparently it was the wrong one. Here, 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 and here. Make sure I grab the exact right constraint. Looks like I have to re-import this. There. Now I can choose this and here. There we go. Now we're cooking. And why don't I just do this? That's much better. Okay, now we can make our blade in FreeCAD. So let's do that. I'm going to hide this plane. I do get tired of looking at planes, whether it's FreeCAD or SolidWorks. And now in FreeCAD, we're going to do a sweep. In SolidWorks, this would be a loft. And what I'm finding with FreeCAD and SolidWorks is when I choose sweep, that is a loft in SolidWorks. And let me show you why I say that. I'll choose my sketch down here. And of course, we're going to sweep up to this ending profile. And I'm given a path to sweep along, and you'll see that SolidWorks also has an object and a path, or in this case, in SolidWorks it's a profile and a path. And so I will select my path, and you can see I'm sweeping along here as we would expect. However, SolidWorks does not have select transformation, and so if I say multi-section, add section, and go here, this is not something that you can do in a SolidWorks sweep, but you can do it in a SolidWorks loft. And that's our blade. So I want to show you what we're doing here in SolidWorks and what both a sweep and a loft would look like in comparison. And of course I'm trying to rotate my screen the FreeCAD way. I'll go up here to Features, and I'll first show you what a sweep is. Again, I'm given just a profile and a path. So I have this profile, and I'll do this path, and largely the same as FreeCAD. I've got start and end tangency, so I can be path tangent if I want to. Again, it's pretty implicit, you know, we're already path tangent, so nothing to see there. Guide curves. You know, I don't have any guide curves, so I can't show you that. And then it just gives you the thin feature, so I can be hollow along this again, moving the FreeCAD way. Again, this hollow on the sweep if I want to be. So there's a hollow feature that thin feature can add. So I cannot complete a sweep and make it look like FreeCAD's. So what I'm going to do instead is go to a loft. And loft gives me a profile, so I can go here and here. And here's a little alignment tool that SolidWorks gives me. You know, when I move this to the other side, now the path is actually crossing over itself. It wouldn't actually work in being a solid. Oh, apparently it would. And that's what it looks like. I stand corrected. But I'm going to move this back over here so we're properly aligned, and I'll use my guide curve. So that is our blade so far. Okay, so we have relatively the same looking, if not the exact same blade. I think it is the exact same that SolidWorks has given us. I would like to make another sketch now to bring my compressor together on my XY plane and make a circle, the same as the footprint that we made on our compressor. We'll go maybe 4 inches, yeah, that's right, and then close, tasks, pad. So doing it what we call in SolidWorks an extrusion, reverse, and we'll make it a 16th, and there we go. So let's do that same thing in SolidWorks. Oh, wrong dimension at the wrong time. Diameter of 8 features. And then we'll do extrude boss base to a thickness of 0.0625. Check out some of the other videos on my channel if you haven't used SolidWorks and want to see some of the extrusion features. It gets pretty thorough in its extrusions, and I've got a video that's just extrusions as part of kind of this course that I've uploaded. So we've got that. Okay, so now that I have my blade, I would like to polar pattern this. So I will choose additive pipe, and let's make a 14 blade compressor. And after thinking about it, we've got 14 blades. So that's good. Let me go do that in SolidWorks. Circular pattern, and I just choose a circular face for direction. That's the easiest thing to do. Notice we've already got equal spacing at 360 degrees, so let's add 14 and hit the box. And something went wrong. So if that kind of error occurs, let's try that again. And this time I'm going to pattern it as a body. So I'll choose this as my body, and again this faces my direction. And we'll make this 14 and it should work. There we go. So there's our blades. We're starting to look remarkably similar. Why don't I grab my front plane, Control 8, sketch, and I'm going to cut a trim into this compressor, and then I'll do the same in FreeCAD. So we'll make this from the origin, I think we're 2.75. And then out here we are 4, and then here we're going to be 1, and from here let's go 2, and I'll give this a radius of, let's say, 2.5. That looks pretty good. And then add some arbitrary dimensions. SolidWorks does not have hotkeys to add in constraints and relations, and that's really handy to have, so I'm glad FreeCAD has that. Okay, now let's do a revolved cut, and SolidWorks doesn't really reference the axes like FreeCAD does, so I like to add a little line right here and revolved cut. And there is a little bit more of the compressor. Let's go ahead and do this in FreeCAD as well. Start a sketch on my, say, YZ plane, and make a 3-point arc. I know there's a way to clip so you can see your sketch. I unfortunately have never learned how. So if you know how to clip a sketch plane like this in the comments, I know I've had people tell me that you can do it. I just have never figured out the exact way to do it. So let's go to the horizontal or vertical dimension, and that was 1 inch. And now we'll go here and be horizontal relative to the origin at 4 inches. There we go. And here we'll be horizontal to the origin at 2 inches, was what we did SolidWorks at. And now, if we look at our radius, let's go -2 inches. Looks much better. In SolidWorks, we did a radius of 2.5, and then vertical, horizontal. Again, should have used polyline for this. It's a hard habit to get into, and of course, I could do polyline, but now I've got one line to draw. SolidWorks kind of defaults at polyline, and so I naturally just grab a line thinking it's polyline. We'll make here and here equal, and we'll give this a dimension of 0.5. Now we'll get normal to our sketch and tasks groove, which in SolidWorks is a revolved cut. And we are looking, again, the same as in SolidWorks. Alright, so now let's add in a large fillet. Let's say on my YZ plane. And I'll do a revolve. And I'll do that by going onto my origin. Again, it would be whoever can tell me how to clip the view so I can see my sketch better will save me a whole lot of problems. And I want to do the SolidWorks style 3-point arc, ends and rim point. Now, forward, I'm going to do a straight line. My origin, merge these two. So now, actually instead of merge, let's do tangent. Tangent. And instead of 4, let's go 3.75. I think we might have a zero thickness issue if I go all 4 inches. Okay. Over here, let's go, let's see what 0.75 inches looks like, and then the vertical dimension. There we go, 2.75. All right, let's revolve that. Beautiful. What a beautiful software FreeCAD really is. Every time I use it and every time a new version comes out, I'm just continually impressed at what great models you can make. Now let's take a look at SolidWorks. Do the same thing over here. We're going to sketch. on the front plane. Vertical. SolidWorks also, if anyone is interested, has kind of a handy feature to where, and before I get too into this, I need to fix one thing that has been bothering me this whole video. I'll take this feature, which is my boss extrude edit feature, and I need to extrude in the other direction so that I'll match what I have in FreeCAD. Okay, now that that little perfectionism moment is over, there's a cool little feature in SolidWorks. If you're interested, I can start a line, and then I just bring this line back to this point, and it creates an arc, and so it kind of saves me a little bit of tooling there. Now I'll make this 3.75 rather. And I think we did 0.75 on the last one. And now I'll do a height, and it's nice on SolidWorks, you just see the sketch right through the solid. Let's go 2.75, and we're fully constrained. So features, revolve, choose this as the axis of rotation, and there we go again. So we have our revolve. Now let's go back to FreeCAD and maybe put in a finishing touch. I don't know if it will let me, but I'd like to sketch on this face, and we'll do a radius of 0.5, let's say, and pocket. Yep, through all. So certainly will. Let's do the same in SolidWorks. And this will be a diameter of 1, was it? I think it was 1. And features, extruded cut, through all. Alright, so let's talk about some of the ways that SolidWorks and FreeCAD are different. So one major difference is FreeCAD, if I try to click on this edge, I'm not even sure. There we go. Let's say I've clicked on that edge and I want to add a fillet. I cannot add a fillet on that edge. The whole thing disappears. It errors out, and that's because I've got this complicated geometry up here and this complicated geometry down here that is really hard to reconcile a fillet with. So SolidWorks seems to be quite friendly when it comes to fillets. I can add a fillet in here, and it can handle pretty complicated geometry. It can taper the radius of a fillet at an edge if it is needed in order for that fillet to happen. So I can add fillets on these blades, whereas I can't do that yet in FreeCAD. SolidWorks has really, really good lofting options. If I go back to my loft and I edit my feature, in fact, I'll actually say edit my path. And let me do a different path entirely. I'll grab this because that's where my plane is going through. Let's do a path like that, and now it would normally be very good form to fully constrain this just for visual. I can get a totally different, this would flow like crap by the way, but I can get a totally different profile. In fact, let me fully constrain it and let's see what happens if we do it in FreeCAD. Make this 2.75. make this 0.5. Give this a vertical dimension of 0.75 and horizontal of, say, 1/4 inch. Good, and that's a half decent profile just as an example. Another thing about FreeCAD is when I go back and change parameters on a sketch, it can take a lot longer to update. And I think it's probably due to some way that FreeCAD rebuilds the part as I update. So it can be a little bit more time consuming when working in FreeCAD and trying to update a sketch. I'm thinking again here that I've already done. So I might fast forward through part of this so you don't have to sit through it with me. Okay, so now that we are fully constrained, let's close the sketch and see what we look like. And it looks like we were not able to rebuild, and so SolidWorks is really good at handling some of these more complex surfaces. In addition, one of the things about lofting that is really handy about SolidWorks is and the other interesting thing is I think you can do this with visible and whatnot, but you can roll back SolidWorks and suppress some of the other features. I might just delete this loft altogether, and that of course deletes all my features of the history tree, but just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, I'm going to do a 3D sketch, which is, if you haven't done SolidWorks before, that's just a sketch that's not on a plane. You use, XYZ coordinates instead of being on a 2D plane, but I'm going to simply just give this, point to point and a radius, say a radius of 3.25, and then I'll give this a center line, and I'll make this go along my y-axis and make this tangent. Oh, and that interferes with my radius. Oh, okay, we're fully constrained. Of course, 2 points in tangency. So one of the cool things I can do with lofting is I can features, loft, and I can use as many guide curves as I want. I truly could use 100 guide curves. I'm going from one profile to the other, and I can even out. And I can choose not only here, but I can say on this side I want you to conform to this surface. And so I can get a very reasonable curvature, and I won't bother rebuilding the whole thing, but you get the idea. There's a very, very dynamic, and then, again, this is lofting, not sweeping. This is sweeping in FreeCAD, but I've played around with it. I could not get multiple curves on one sweep, and I don't think sweep was designed for that either, so it's not necessarily FreeCAD's fault, but it's just a great feature that SolidWorks brings to the table. So here's our compressor, and hopefully this was a good overview as to some of the key differences in using SolidWorks versus FreeCAD. They are remarkably similar. I am so impressed again with FreeCAD. Kudos to those who made it. It's a really incredible software. Hope this was helpful, and if it was, please subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.